Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast with Tyler Trent from Purdue is brought to you by Compassion International. Go to compassion.com/sportsspectrum. This is your chance to release a child from poverty. It's $38 a month, and we are so excited and so thankful for the great work being done by Compassion International. I'm grateful to have them as partners here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. For $38 a month, your sponsorship provides access to school, medical care, food, vocational training, and the opportunity, this is most important, the opportunity to know Jesus. Compassion International does it right. We're grateful for their partnership. Releasing a child from poverty, that's what this is about. And you connecting with a child and providing them hope. $38 a month. It's the holiday season. This is a great time to gather around the table, to get the family together, to go to compassion.com/sportsspectrum and sponsor a child today. Our guest today on the Sports Spectrum podcast is Tyler Trent. And if you know that name, Tyler is a 20-year-old Purdue student who's in the fight of his life right now. And I am so honored and humbled to be able to invite Tyler and have him accept my invitation to come on this podcast. You know, he's been on SportsCenter and co-hosting and doing interviews with Scott Van Pelt, and his story was featured on ESPN back in early October, and that's what really sort of thrusted Tyler into the spotlight. And everybody that I've talked to and seen, especially on social media, has been inspired and impacted by Tyler's fight. And he is in a fight. He's in the fight of his life. He's a cancer fighter. He's also a huge sports fan and a huge Purdue fan. And it was so cool to watch him, and his one sort of wish was to watch Purdue beat Ohio State. And he got to go to the game. ESPN documented it. It's on YouTube. It's wonderful. He got to go to the game. He got to be in the locker room with the team, and he got to watch Purdue really kick Ohio State's butt. They beat them and beat them pretty badly. And that was such a neat thing to watch them rally around Tyler. And after the game, coming in and telling, players were telling Tyler how, they inspired him. And Tyler has inspired so many, including myself. And I don't know. I was watching him do a bunch of interviews and share his faith a little bit here and there on social media. And, the platform that we have is to talk openly about our faith and not be ashamed of it. And Tyler has never been ashamed of his faith through this whole ordeal. And so I wanted to see if he'd be willing to come on to this podcast and talk about Jesus and talk about his faith and what it means to him, and to talk about his battle a little bit. And so I'm truly honored. This is probably the hardest interview I've ever had to do, but it's also the most impactful interview I've ever done. And I'm certainly humbled to be able to talk to Tyler Trent. He's been an inspiration to me. I believe he'll be an inspiration to you as well. So let's get to it. Take a listen to our interview with Purdue student, super fan, cancer fighter, and true inspiration, Tyler Trent. Tyler, welcome to the program.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Tyler, it's truly an honor to have you here on the show, on the podcast. Let's start with just your health. How are you doing right now?
Things are going about as well as they can considering the circumstances. So I can't complain.
That's good. The past few months, you've become, in many ways, like this rock star in a lot of ways. And we're also encouraged by your fight and obviously how you're living your life, and we've seen all the happy smiles and the great things that have come your way. But I wonder how have the past few months been? Because as great as all the things that you've been able to do have been, you're still in a battle here. So I wonder, how has the last few months been for you?
Like you said, there are definitely smiles, and so the smiles obviously come during good times. But there have definitely been some hard times as well. You can't. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
You can't hide that. So there are definitely hard times and good times, for sure. So, just with anything, medical wise, it's always kind of a variable just in for me at least, every day is kind of like playing the lottery, just based upon how I'm going to feel. And I have these things called nephrostomy tubes because my kidneys don't function properly. So I have to have my kidneys manually flushed via these things called nephrostomy tubes. And so they tend to stop working very often. And so just, day to day, just depending on whether they're working or not is a gamble. And so if they're not working, then we have, it's kind of very brings a lot of tension in my home and anxiety because depending on how badly, they're not working or working, could end up in me being in the hospital and having to have emergency surgery, kind of like I did during the week of the Ohio State game.
Well, following you on Twitter, obviously that's how we got connected, and so many have watched your journey, Tyler, and are inspired. Your faith is clearly a big part of your life. This is a faith and sports podcast, so I just want to ask you about your faith a little bit, your faith in Jesus, and let's start with where that started for you. Were you raised in a Christian household, and was your faith part of your journey for, a good part of your life?
Yeah, no, I was raised in a Christian household. My parents, I owe a lot of my upbringing and just, a lot of my faith to my parents who raised me in a Christian household. So, I've been in the church for, my entire 20 years of my life.
How has your relationship with Christ sustained you throughout all this? How has it helped you, especially in the last year and even in the last few months of you battled and fight? How is that faith sustaining you?
It's my everything. It's the cornerstone. So, every morning I make sure to get in the Word, and, my faith is what keeps me going. Honestly, I don't think I would be able to smile, or have the happy face, that people have seen on TV without my faith, and just, that supporting me and me knowing, whether I wake up tomorrow or not, I know where I'm going to end up. And so, having that comfort and that peace is huge. And I really don't know how anyone is able to fight kind of, a terminal illness without faith, honestly.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. Just encourage those that are listening. We have a lot of families, certainly a lot of coaches, people who've been through things as well. Certainly probably not to the extent that you're fighting right now, but explain to people how you're able to still trust in a God, trust in Jesus when you're going through what you're going through.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy, I would say. There have definitely been, and I'm not going to pretend like it's always been easy, or, it's always kind of been there for me. Sure. When I was first diagnosed, I definitely entered a deep depression, and, asked all those questions that, one would think that, to normally ask, questioning God of, why would you give me cancer? Because, when I was first diagnosed, I was 15 years old. And so that's a lot for a kid of that age to take on.
Sure.
And so, I asked all those questions of why God, and was angry at God for, about a year. And I would say it wasn't really until I was diagnosed for a second time where, I was really able to kind of find my faith and make it my own. And I would say, that's kind of when the light switch turned on for me. When I was diagnosed for a second time, that's when I kind of just really turned it over to God and, wanted to make sure that, I was giving him, all the glory through that.
What's been your favorite Bible verse, or maybe a message or a Bible story that has helped you during this time?
A Bible verse that's kind of been, that I found, and actually it was in my daily devotional, when my parents first told me that I had cancer, is 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18, which says, rejoice always, give thanks, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus through you. And so, this is something that I really try and live out and really believe in. And, I would say, just in hard times, just try and remind myself of the fact that, I should rejoice always and you give thanks, because, this is God's will, whether I want it to be or not. God has a plan for me, and I don't know what that is, and whatever it is, I should be okay with it. And that's it's a lot to take on, a lot to really kind of believe, I would say, and it's not easy to believe at all times, for sure.
Yeah, it's not easy for anyone to rejoice always and pray without ceasing and be thankful and everything, especially for somebody who's battling the way you're battling. So it's very inspirational and very encouraging. I got to ask you about ESPN, and they did that story on you, and I just thought it was so inspiring the way they did that. And then Scott Van Pelt had you on SportsCenter, and I loved that interview, and that seemed like such a cool thing that you got to do. Tell me about that experience and having, because you were battling, and it wasn't easy even to have a camera crew filming you during those times. Tell me about the ESPN story, because that's really what catapulted you sort of into this, I don't want to call it fame, but into the public spotlight, because a lot of people in Indiana knew your journey. But certainly once ESPN did that story, it became sort of a national story for everybody else to learn about. Tell me about ESPN and coming to film that with you and what that experience was like.
Yeah, no, that was a pretty crazy experience, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't really exactly know how they found my story. I just know that, at least from what they told my dad, they had kind of been following my story for a little bit, and from local news pieces, because, like you said, the local news kind of already knew about me and my story.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of already prominent within Indiana a little bit. And so they contacted my dad and said, hey, we would like to do a piece on your son. Would he be open to that? And, for a guy like me who loves sports, who grew up watching sports, getting to be on ESPN is, every little kid's dream. And so, I was absolutely all for sharing my story with them. And the fact that for me, it was like an answer to prayer, because when I was diagnosed for a second time, I really just prayed to the Lord and said, hey, Lord, I don't know what you have planned for me during this second diagnosis, but, whatever it is, I want to give you glory through that. And so I just saw that as an opportunity, to just, also share my faith as well as my story. And just, I saw that as an answer to prayer as well, of the Lord saying, hey, here's an opportunity for you to share, share about me and kind of be a light in the dark world. And so the Scott Van Pelt thing was like, a dream as well. I grew up watching him, and, I said that within the piece. And so, he's someone that I look up to and respect greatly within the sports world. And so just being able to be on his show was incredible. And just something that I see as, just as the Lord rewarding me, I would say, in a way of just, not trying to sound vain in any way, shape, or form, but once again, of him just, I just say the Lord, just opens doors and I'm just walking through them. So, it wasn't hard for me to say no to Scott, when he first asked me, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's the best, that's for sure. And I know your Twitter page has kind of grown quite a bit lately too, and that's how you and I connected. A lot of people are tweeting at you, sending prayers and notes of encouragement, and I'm sure you even get some private DM messages because your DMs are open. Share with us, if you could, maybe one or two, or just maybe the one person or situation that has tweeted at you, maybe it was privately, maybe it was publicly, that you were just blown away by. You couldn't believe that this person was tweeting at you or sending you a note of encouragement.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say, it has to be Drew Brees. Drew reached out and privately DM'd me and told me that, that he was praying for me, and just was thankful, that I was a Purdue Boilermaker and was there for the Ohio State game and helped, help them win, is what people were saying, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I don't think I really played that huge of a role personally, but because I didn't physically, play a snap at all. So I give all credit to the guys who actually did play the game, and, won it, physically for the Purdue Boilermakers. So, I would say, just, he's someone, once again, that I have looked up to my entire life, and just, I see as a great role model for, how people, how a man should live. And, I love everything that he stands for, and just the way that he has, raised his family, and, all the volunteer stuff that he does within his community. And so just, receiving a DM from him was super encouraging, just because he's just someone I look up to so much.
Last couple questions here with Tyler Trent on the podcast. Tyler, what's the biggest lesson or something you've learned from the Lord during all of this time that he's been teaching you? Is there something that God has shown you during all of this that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, I would say, to a point, and this is one thing that I've tried to recite time and time again, not only to myself, but to other people who are willing to listen as well. It's just the fact that, everyone has a story. There just needs to be someone willing to listen to it. And so, that's kind of how, I came to, I was, like you said, this fame is the fact that, ESPN was willing to listen to my story. Or you can go all the way back to the local news was first, willing to listen to my story and then tell it. And, from that, we have the snowball effect of me having, the opportunity of just, being able to share my story with a bunch, with thousands of other people. And, not only share my story, but share the love of Christ with thousands of other people. And so, I can't promise that that's how the Lord's going to work in everyone's life. But, I would say, it's really important just to listen to other people, and take time out of your day to sacrifice, your time to listen to other people, because not only can they encourage you, through their battles, and through things that they're suffering through, but you can also encourage them, just through taking time to listen to them, because, you never know what other people are going through. Right. And it's really easy nowadays to hide behind a fake smile and hide things, and put on a mask, so to say. And so I say listen to other people is definitely something that I have, just been encouraged by. And just, I was on crutches when I was at Purdue because I had to have a hip surgery. And so, this one day that I was talking to someone on Purdue's campus, and they had told me, I was just kind of asking them some questions, and was just kind of listening to their story. And they had told me that they had actually had to spend 3 years on crutches because they had been through some medical issues. And just, that was just really kind of just in that moment kind of made me, think about, just the fact that I had mentally been complaining to myself just about the fact that, I had to use crutches for like a year. And so, just through listening to their story, and just the fact that, they had to use crutches on Purdue to get around Purdue's campus for 3 years was, mind blowing for me. I, just couldn't, in that moment, just could not fathom how they had done that, when I had, spent kind of a year on crutches. Yeah. And so that's, just an example, I guess, I can give you of how listening to others can just impact you in your day.
Oh, that's great wisdom, Tyler. Last question for you, buddy. And I really, again, appreciate you joining us. It's Thanksgiving tomorrow. We're taping this Wednesday, November 21st. Thanksgiving's tomorrow. We're going to run this Friday, November 23rd for everybody to listen to. What are you most thankful for? You mentioned that Bible verse in 1 Thessalonians. It says, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. So what are you thankful for most, Tyler?
Honestly, just the ability to be home and spend Thanksgiving with my family. When I came home from Purdue and first entered into hospice care, they only gave me a couple of weeks to live. Mm-hmm. And so just the fact that, the Lord has provided me this much time still is, I don't know what he has planned still for me. But just incredibly thankful that, I'm still here and able to spend a Thanksgiving with my family.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tyler, you're a true inspiration, buddy. We are praying for you. I'm grateful for you for shining that light of Christ that you have to the masses. And we just really appreciate you joining us and Hey, go Boilers, man. I don't. Is that how you say it? Go Boilers? Is it Boiler Up? I'm not a Boilermaker
It's
fan.
Boiler Up.
Boiler
Yeah.
Up. Okay. Well, Tyler, Boiler Up, buddy. We really appreciate you, and we're praying for you, man. Have a great Thanksgiving, and all the best to you, buddy.
Well, thank you. You have a great Thanksgiving as well. Yeah, and Boiler Up.
Many thanks to Tyler Trent for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. And Tyler's doing some great things trying to gain attention to cancer and to cancer research. And so he's got a couple things going on that I want to point you guys to. And I really want to encourage you to help raise money and help raise awareness to Tyler's story by purchasing, first of all, the bobblehead, the Tyler Trent, Tyler Strong, Purdue University bobblehead. They have them for pre-sale right now at a specific website that we have linked on sportspectrum.com. The website's kind of a long one, so I don't want to share it because it's easy to forget. But if you go to sportspectrum.com, and actually if you just go to Tyler's Twitter page at the Tyler Trent, you'll see it. You'll see that link for his bobblehead there to scroll through his timeline and go purchase a bobblehead. The proceeds of that are going to go to cancer research with the V Foundation as well as the Tyler Trent Cancer Research Endowment. So go check that out. Also want to encourage you to buy a t-shirt. Tyler's got these t-shirts that he's helping sell, and you can check those out. Here's a website for that, represent.com/Tyler, represent.com/Tyler. Proceeds going to the V Foundation for Cancer Research. Join us in praying for Tyler, would you? We believe in his story. We're so proud of him, obviously, the way that he's fought. I say we as in like all of us, because everybody knows his story now, especially in the sports community. And he's a fighter. And I just love, not only does he fight, but he fights with faith. He fights with Christ. Just grateful to Tyler for being willing to come on this podcast. I was actually very nervous in doing this interview. I just felt a heavy responsibility to do this properly. And I hope I did. I just pray that God uses this interview to point people back to him and to make sure Tyler's story gets out to as many people that maybe haven't heard it if they haven't seen it by now on ESPN. So truly grateful and humbled, wishing Tyler nothing but the best. Much love to him and his entire family, and Boiler Up. I'm learning the way. Boiler Up. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time here on the Sports Spectrum podcast.